Do you want to do a better job of achieving your goals and New Year's resolutions in the year ahead? Because if you do, in this video, I'm going to show you how you can lay out your goals in a way that makes it much more likely that you will achieve them. This is the time of year that many of us are going to be looking at our lives and choosing goals and resolutions for the year ahead. But there's a problem with the way we've been taught to think about goals and resolutions, especially when we attach them to an annual event like New Year's. And it's not just the way we've been taught to think about them, but the way we tend to talk about them. One problem is that to do this annually is too infrequent. And the problem with that is it means that when we look, we often feel very far behind or very far away from where we would really like to be. And so as a knee-jerk reaction, as a shock reaction, we tend to create a big agenda of change, big goals, and sometimes too many of them. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with being ambitious. I encourage ambitious. But when we create a big agenda of really big chunk changes, it can seem like a massive mountain to climb. It can become very difficult to build up the momentum that we need and very difficult to create the consistency we would need, especially if we are leading a busy life. And if we find it too difficult to do the work to create inroads with this big agenda, then we can get frustrated, disenchanted, and we might quit. That's what we need to fix. So let's look at how we can deal with this. What I'm going to show you is how to lay out your goals on a visual roadmap. It's a roadmap I've borrowed and adopted from agile development methods, if you know what they are. Don't worry if you don't, that's not really important. But let's have a look at this roadmap. Now, the first thing that you'll notice is that the space is divided in two ways. The straight diagonal lines divide the space into three segments. The two semicircular lines divide the space into three time zones: now, next, and later. You can, if you wish, replace those with specific time frames like 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. But I'll explain to you why I don't do that later. Now, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is to think of three categories in your life that you want to make change happen in. You might be tempted to create more, but I'm going to encourage you to try and limit yourself to three. And that's because the most surefire way of making sure that you change nothing this year is to try and change too much, to create an overwhelming agenda. Rome wasn't built in a day, and you can't change everything in your life in 1 year. But by reducing the amount you focus on, the more you increase your ability to make changes happen in those areas. And besides, other areas of your life might benefit at the same time. So for my three categories, I chose health and well-being, money and finance, and contribution, which means the ways that I want to contribute to a better world through the services I can provide. But there are plenty of other ones you could choose. You might choose career, and you might choose family. Now, once you've chosen those three categories where you most want to make a difference in the next year, the next thing I'm going to ask you to do is to think of your long-term goal in that category. Now, when we talk about goals, we often talk about the SMART criteria. You might have heard of it. Some people say it's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. Others say it's specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-based. Either way, it points at the same set of ideas. But for these long-term goals, I'm not going to get you to worry too much about making them smart. Now, I know that might sound like heresy in coaching circles, but these are long-term goals. These are more like your big dream. It's worth making them specific to a point and measurable, definitely relevant, but at this stage, don't worry too much about achievable, realistic, or time-based. And that's because these are long-term goals. We're looking way out with these. So for example, in my well-being category, I might have my eye on a particular body shape, or a target weight range, or an ability to do activity levels which I currently can't do. And once you've chosen your long-term goal for that category, write it down. Now, as the space itself can get a little bit cramped unless it's a big piece of paper, you might just want to put a sticky note on and just point an arrow to the place where that note belongs. Now, the thing about these long-term goals is that right now they probably do look like a mountain to climb and probably look intimidating. But this is where we have to do the key thing to make these achievable. I want to introduce the idea of means goals and ends goals. These long-term goals are what I would call ends goals. They're where we're trying to get to ultimately. But in the same way that a mile is walked one step at a time, our means goals are incremental steps towards the ends goals. And that's where achievable and time-based becomes more relevant. Because the idea is we want to be able to pick up a means goal, and it needs to be something that we can achieve with actions we can do now, with work we can do now. So if my long-term goal in well-being is to target a certain weight range, then one of my means goals might be 30 days of walking a mile a day. Or if that's too ambitious, if that's too unachievable for you, then maybe something smaller. Maybe a 20-minute walk each morning. But something that in and of itself is not overwhelming. Something that in and of itself is not going to be impossible to fit in. Because remember, the means goals are about creating actionable incremental improvement, something that moves us towards the long-term goal. Now again, that's not to say that it shouldn't be ambitious. That's not to say aim low. I want you to be ambitious enough that it makes a tangible difference. But it also needs to be something that you can start and maintain. Now, you don't have to identify all of the means goals that take you all the way to the ends goals. But what you do need is a set of means goals that you can visualize in 3 time frames. The means goals that you're going to work on now, the means goals that you're going to work on next, and the means goals that you're going to work on after. And I want you to plot them on the roadmap like this. Now, the key thing here is that whatever you put into the next and later segments, that's you visualizing and looking ahead. But the focus of your work is going to be on the means goals which are in the now segment. And the means goals that are in next and later can build on what you achieve with what you focus on now. Remember that at any one point in time, we need to narrow our focus if we're going to achieve something. Now, once you've done that, once you've put these means goals onto the roadmap, the next thing I want you to do is to limit the work in progress. In other words, if you've got too many means goals in now, push some of them out. Don't create an agenda that you can't create momentum with. Remember, even if you want to create one small improvement this year, it's better than achieving nothing because you tried to achieve too much. Now, once you've done this, you now have your 3 categories, you have your long-term goals, and you have your means goals sorted into now, next, and later, and you've created an agenda which is not overwhelming. You've limited your focus, you've limited your work in progress. And here's why I choose now, next, and later rather than 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months. And that is because I don't want to use dates as a stick to beat myself by. Now, if you're the kind of person who does need deadlines to motivate yourself, you might want to do that. I'm not that kind of person. I'm the kind of person that if I want something and I believe in it, I will do the work without a deadline. And in fact, deadlines can often cause me to close down rather than open up. But this is where you need to be sensitive to your preferences and what works best for you. But here comes perhaps the most important part of this, perhaps the most important point about how we maintain our traction. And that is, quit doing this once a year at New Year's. Do this much more frequently. Maintain this much more frequently. Because your circumstances will change, your needs will change, your wants will change. And that means your plan needs to change. You might change which 3 categories you're focusing on. You might reevaluate what your now, next, and later goals are. If you're making great progress, you might bring some goals forward. If you find it too hard to focus on everything, you might want to reduce the focus and push some things out. But be adaptive and maintain this. And remember, the idea here is to create a sequence of frequent small improvements that move you towards those long-term goals. Now, we talked about the SMART model here. There's a lot more to understand that people do not teach. And to expand on that, watch this video here. This is Steve, wishing you health and happiness.